Don't the juices flow? Doesn't the drive increase, you know?
Right. And it isn't even the drive so much in terms of biology, because the drive to me is a biological drive, which women tend to lose along the way. Men hang on to that for longer, but the women lose that. But what we need to focus on is a woman's motivation for sex. So you have to look at the context.
That's what I'm calling drive. Because if you don't feel connected, you don't have a drive to have sex.
Right. You're not motivated to do it.
Yeah, motivated. We're using a different word for the same thing. Right. Because that is so true that if you don't feel connected and you don't feel safe, the first thing that goes off is your desire.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how stress and resentment and like all these things they do affect women, generally speaking, differently. You know, women are much more detailed focused, they're more in their heads, and men are much better, and we can learn something from them, is that they're much better at separating what goes on in their body and what goes on in their brain.
Yeah, that compartmentalizing is it serves them really well.
Yes,
you know, like the classic joke I tell in Kiss Your Fights Goodbye, where the two guys are asking each other, have you ever been too sick to have sex? And the one guy says to his other male friend, well, yeah, once I was too sick. And the other guy says to him, man, I could have 106-degree fever and I wouldn't be too sick for sex. And his friend responds, I said sick, you know.
Well, that's it. That's exactly it. Whereas a woman, you know, makes her sick to think that her kitchen is upside down, you know.
Really? You don't take the garbage out? No, you're not getting below the belt here, no.
Well, you know, and it makes us seem so complex, and guys are like scratching their heads, you know, like, why? It's so unfair. It's so unfair. But it's not a question of fairness. It is what it is. We're
so different. You know, the procreative imperative, the poor guys, they have 400 million sperm saying, come on, I don't care if we're not getting along. I got to spread my seed. I got to continue the species here.
That's right. Exactly.
And the women are thinking, I don't want to get knocked up with a guy who isn't going to stick around, you know, and it doesn't feel safe. And, you know, women will say, but I'm past menopause. He can't knock me up anymore. But our psychological, biological programming doesn't care about that.
That's right. That's right.
You know, it's so crazy. So, you know, so the book really came out of your, if I may say, it came out of your own wish to really have the second half of your life be sexy and great.
Absolutely. And it's just, and also I'm surrounded by other 50-year-olds, right? So my everyday life in terms of my friendship circle, and, you know, I have a large web of friends, and they're all in their 50s. So these are all the things we talk about. So really I wrote it for them. I wrote it for us. I wrote it for my clients who also struggle with a lot of these questions. So and my listeners who also, you know, I get thousands upon thousands of emails, and so I see what the patterns are, and so much to do with aging, aging.
Mm-hmm.
And aging begins young.
I wanted to also talk a little bit about some of the things that kill our sex drive, because, you know, we're going to take a little break. You know, my second segment I call Dr. Love's Quickie segment. You can guess why. It's
I love
short.
it.
How fitting for our topic. But then when we come back, I always do some tweets on the topic just to sort of drive home the points that we're talking about. Okay. I'll do a few tweets, but I also wanted to talk a little bit about some of the misconceptions, because I was going to do like the top 5 misconceptions that people have about sex over 50, which you could just ditch these misconceptions. It would help a lot. And then some of the things that people don't realize that kill the sex drive, even though they're unrelated to age, so that people will actually think, oh, it's because I'm older, when in fact it's not because you're older, it's something else that's causing it. So I wanted to get into that, and maybe we can slip all that in during the Quickie segment. I don't know. It depends. If we can't be quick enough, we'll just let it run over to the next segment.
Sure. My pleasure.
All righty. We'll take a brief break, and I'll be back with you in a moment on Ask Dr. Love Radio.
Dr. Love's Quickies.
Wondering how to tell the difference between love and lust?
Poor Mark. Every time he takes a woman to bed, he ends up scratching his head. His big head, I mean. How can he tell if he's in love or only in lust? Time. Lust usually fades in a few weeks while true love lasts. So when it comes to gauging if you're in love or only in lust, remember you can't trust lust. I'm Dr. Jamie Turndorf of AskDrLove.com.
You are listening to Ask Dr. Love with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. Ask Dr. Love is the web's premier relationship advice site since 1996. Visit AskDrLove.com to search thousands of free relationship advice articles on any relationship issue you may have, or submit a question to her free advice column. You can also watch this broadcast live over Google Hangouts or YouTube. Sign up for her newsletter at AskDrLove.com to be the first to know about her upcoming radio shows. And find out how you can watch her live and ask her questions in real time. Don't be shy. Dr. Turndorf wants to help you, so take advantage of this unique opportunity to get a personal answer from one of today's most respected experts. This show is for you, the listeners. So if you have a question for her, make sure to watch live on Tuesdays from 1 to 2 Eastern Time on Google Hangouts or YouTube. Or catch the archived broadcast on webtalkradio.net. Now, back to Dr. Love.
Welcome back to Ask Dr. Love Radio. I'm Dr. Jamie Turndorf. I'm talking about perfect passion after 50 with my guest, Dr. Laurie Betito, author of The Sex Bible for People Over 50, and this is Dr. Love's Quickie segment. So, Laurie, I was saying to you before we took the break that I was interested in debunking some of the myths that people have about sex over 50. So do you want to lay a few on us now?
I shall. The first one is that sexually women peak in their 30s. We always say that women achieve their peak when in fact both men and women really peak at the same age, which is 18. When we talk about a peak, we're talking about a testosterone or a hormone peak, but that changes after, where all levels drop for both men and women. They just happen to drop faster for women, but that doesn't mean that women can't have the best sex of their lives later on. So when we hear that women peak later, actually we often hear in their 40s and in their 50s that they peak, because it's only in later life that they, like we said before, they know their bodies more, they're enjoying themselves more, they're not worried about getting pregnant, and all the studies, like many studies and surveys have actually shown that. So it's out there. But yet we think, that it's only in their 30s, when in fact it's probably closer to their 50s that women. Another one is that the orgasms you have when you're young are better, are more intense. So meaning that sex is probably more satisfying when you're young. And again, that's not true. Many studies are showing that women are more orgasmic as they age and are more likely to have even their first orgasms later, for the very first time, much later. So again, mature women have a better understanding of what makes them tick, right? And they're much less afraid of asking for what they want, which means that if they can ask for what they want, to be touched in the way that they want, then they can be stimulated to have that orgasm much better, much faster than if they said nothing and didn't show. Another myth is that erection problems are inevitable, which is untrue, because, first of all men experience some erectile dysfunction at some point in their lives, and only about a quarter of those men later in life experience erectile dysfunction severe enough to require medication, whereas we think, all men after a certain age need Viagra, for example, which isn't true.